Welcome to Neural Nexus Podcast, where we explore the hottest topics shaping the world. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we'll be looking at something pretty cool, deep research. And before you think this is just for, tech people, it's really not. It's AI that can basically do all the hard work of research for pretty much anything you can think of.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Like, imagine having a research assistant who could not only look at market trends, but also, find like a specific episode of a TV show that you barely remember. Or even like speed up scientific discoveries, like with stem cells.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. So
Yeah.
is this like a super search engine or something?
It's more than that. It actually gathers information from the entire internet, analyzes it all, and then puts it all together in a way that's easy to understand.
So it doesn't just give you tons of search results, it actually figures it all out.
Yeah, exactly. And today, we have 3 examples for you, each one showing a different way that deep research can be used. First, we'll see how it helps a business analyze market trends, like for launching a new app. Then we'll see how it can be like a detective and find a specific TV show episode based on just like vague memories. And finally, we'll look at how it's being used to help scientists make discoveries, specifically in stem cell research.
Okay, I'm ready to have my mind blown. Let's start with that app launch. Let's say I was making a new translation app powered by ChatGPT. Where's the best place to launch it to be successful?
Well, you wouldn't want to just guess, right? Deep research can actually figure that out. You go all over the web for information about stuff like, iPhone and Android adoption rates in different countries, how interested people are in learning new languages, and even how mobile phone use has changed in the past 10 years. And then it takes all of that information and puts it into a table that's easy to read so you can compare all the different countries.
So it's not just finding the data, it's about making the data, usable. Did it look at specific countries?
It did. It looked at the top 10 developed countries and the top 10 developing countries, all based on GDP. And some of the results were kind of surprising. You might think that everyone in developed countries wants to learn new languages, but that's not necessarily true.
I guess it depends on the country and also, what other languages people already speak.
Exactly. What deep research found was that places like Japan, the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia actually have the best combination. They have a lot of iPhones, and people really want to learn new languages.
So if I was launching my translation app, those would be good places to start.
Yeah, those would be at the top of the list.
Yeah.
But deep research also found that there are opportunities in developing economies, too, specifically in Mexico and Brazil.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of those. Why those two?
Well, even though Android is more popular in those markets, there are still millions of iPhone users.
Yeah.
And there's a really strong desire to learn English, especially if people want to get better jobs. So even though the overall smartphone market might be different there, those specific countries stand out.
So it's about finding those pockets of opportunity, not just the overall size of the market, right? What did deep research say I should actually do to launch the app?
It said you should take a tiered approach. So you'd focus on those iPhone-heavy developed markets first, like Japan and the Western countries we talked about. Then, once your app is doing well, you could expand into those larger developing markets, like Mexico and Brazil.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like a roadmap for success. Instead of guessing, you're using, deep research.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the best things about this technology. It helps you make smarter decisions, whether you're launching an app, researching a topic, or just trying to learn new things.
Okay, so we've seen how deep research can help businesses make smart decisions. But what about something a bit more fun, have you ever had that thing where you remember a scene from a TV show, you can't remember what show it was?
Oh, yeah, all the time. It drives me crazy.
Oh,
You
yeah.
just keep trying to remember all the little details, but you can't remember the name of the show.
Exactly. I remember this scene where there was this, tense poker game, and then there was a man who was locked in a room, and later on there was a scene at a butcher shop where someone gave, vodka as a gift. It's driving me nuts.
Well, get ready to be amazed, because deep research can actually be like a detective for TV shows.
Right.
It can take those little details you remember and figure out what show it is and even what episode.
Wait, really? It can do that?
Yeah. So in this case, it would look at all those details. The poker game, the locked room, the vodka at the butcher shop, and it would figure out that the show is counterpart. It would even tell you the exact episode, Both Sides Now, Season 1, Episode 4.
That's incredible. But is it just a cool trick, or is there something more to it?
It is pretty cool, but it's more than just finding TV show episodes. This shows that deep research can find and connect really specific information from huge amounts of data. Like, think about it. This could be used for things like fact-checking or research or even creative writing.
Yeah, that's true. Like if you're a writer and you want to find like similar themes in different stories, you could describe a scene and deep research could find all those connections.
Exactly. It opens up a ton of possibilities for researching creativity. But, okay, let's move on to something a little more practical. Have you ever struggled to find specific information online, even though you know it's got to be out there somewhere?
Ugh, yeah, all the time. It can feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Okay, so let's say you want to find proof that buttons on websites work better when they have both an icon and a label, rather than just one or the other. There has to be research out there on that, right?
Right. So how would deep research figure this out?
He would look at all kinds of stuff, studies, articles, design guidelines, and pull out all the important information and summarize it for you.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What did it find?
Well, good news. Icon plus label wins. It found that in most cases, using both an icon and a label on buttons makes them more clear and effective. People make fewer mistakes, and most people just prefer them that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes you see just an icon and you're not sure what it means. Like, is this heart a favorite or a like? Or does it mean add to wish list? It's just clearer with a label, too.
Exactly. And deep research didn't just give an opinion. It found evidence from studies on user error rates and user preferences.
But what about the arguments for only using icons? Like, some designers say it looks better or simpler. Did deep research look at those arguments, too?
It did. It found that, yeah, icons can make things look nicer, but only if they have labels with them. If not, then it's not very clear. It also said that people who use websites and apps a lot might prefer just icons because they already know what they mean. But for most people, labels are really important.
Totally. I've definitely been like, wait, what does that icon mean again? Even for apps I use all the time.
Yeah, we've all been there. Deep research also pointed out that, not everyone is the same. Older people might need labels because they're not as familiar with modern icons, and people who are new to a website or app really need labels to figure out how to use it.
So it's all about making sure things are designed to work for everyone.
Right. Deep research basically said that using both icons and labels is the best way to do it because it works for pretty much everyone, no matter their age or experience level.
Okay, let's switch gears. I'm thinking about going snowboarding in Hokkaido in Japan, but I need the perfect snowboard to handle all that amazing powder.
Oh, nice. Sounds like a trip. Well, deep research can help you get ready. It can analyze data about all kinds of snowboards, the specs, user reviews, all of it.
Nice. I was hoping for a versatile all-mountain or freestyle board with medium flex, something that can handle groomed runs and powder days. Oh, and it has to have a cool, citrusy color palette, you know. Gotta have style.
Yeah, gotta have style. What's really cool is that deep research was able to take all your preferences, the type of board, the flex, even the color, and recommend a bunch of boards that would be perfect with pictures and everything. It even explained why each one would be good for the snow in Hokkaido.
Seriously. Does it have any tips for writing in powder?
It did.
Yeah.
Even stuff like keeping your weight back and maintaining speed.
Feels like having a snowboard coach in my pocket.
It really shows how deep research can bring all this information together and give it to you in a way that's useful for your specific needs.
It wasn't just a random list of boards. It was specifically for ME and where I'm going snowboarding.
Right. It's all about giving you personalized information that helps you make better decisions. Now, let's go even deeper.
Okay, I'm ready. What else can it do?
We've talked about markets, TV shows, and snowboards. But can deep research handle something as complex as linguistics?
Ooh, now that sounds interesting. Let's get into some grammar.
Imagine you're a linguist on a movie set, like 500 years in the future. The movie is about a world where English has changed a lot and become a Creole language, with parts from all kinds of other languages.
So like a futuristic English. I'm in. What's the problem?
Your job is to translate modern English sentences into this future Creole language.
Yeah.
And you have to think about things like changes in word order and even something called reduplication.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to need some help with that one. What's reduplication?
Basically, it's when you repeat a word or part of a word to change what it means. Like think about bye-bye or teeny-weeny.
Got it. Okay, so how can deep research help with all this?
It can analyze languages that are already Creoles, study how languages change over time, and even come up with possible translations based on specific rules of language.
That's really impressive. So was it actually able to translate English into this futuristic Creole?
It did. It had to figure out all sorts of things like the Creole's grammar and syntax. For instance, it was able to figure out how the Creole marked the subject of a sentence, and it did it differently depending on the verb, a feature called ergativity.
That sounds complicated.
Yeah, it is, but deep research did it perfectly. It also figured out how the word order had changed in the Creole, moving from the usual English subject-verb-object to a subject-object-verb order.
That's so cool. So deep research wasn't just translating words, it was understanding how the language worked. Did it run into any problems?
One of the toughest parts was figuring out how to form comparative and superlative adjectives in the Creole. Instead of using suffixes like and est or words like more and most, it used a system of partial reduplication.
So instead of saying sweeter, you'd say something like was sweet.
Exactly. And even though deep research knew about reduplication, at first it had trouble applying the rules correctly. But it kept learning and refining its understanding and eventually got those grammatical forms right.
So it's not just using rules, it's learning and changing as it goes. That's really incredible.
And that adaptability is one of its strongest points. Okay, let's come back to the present for a second. How many gene therapies do you think have been approved in the United States for treating hemophilia?
Good question. I'm not sure, but that's definitely something deep research can find out. It can search all the FDA databases, science papers, company websites, the whole 9 yards. Okay, spill the beans. How many are there?
As of October 15th last year, there were 3 gene therapies approved in the U.S. for hemophilia. 2 for hemophilia B and 1 for hemophilia A.
Wow, that's amazing. Just a few years ago, gene therapy was still experimental, and now there are 3 approved therapies for a disease that used to be so hard to treat.
It really shows how fast science is moving these days. And tools like deep research help us keep up with all these new discoveries and really understand the science behind them.
Okay, so let's talk about these 3 approved gene therapies. Earlier, we mentioned Hemagenics, the first one for hemophilia B. Did deep research find any downsides or concerns with it?
One thing it pointed out was a potential concern with hemagenics, and really any gene therapy that uses a viral vector. It's possible that the body might have an immune reaction to the vector itself.
So even though they modify the virus to be harmless, the body might still think it's a threat and attack it.
Right. And this immune response could affect how well the therapy works, or even cause some side effects.
Okay, so how do they deal with that risk?
Before they give someone hemagenics, they do a screening to make sure the person doesn't already have antibodies against that specific viral vector. If they do, then they might not be able to get the therapy.
It's like checking for compatibility before they even start. What about Roctavian? That's the gene therapy for hemophilia A, right? Any red flags with that one?
Deep research noted that for Roctavian, the levels of factor VIII, which is the clotting factor the therapy provides, seem to go down over time for some patients.
So even though it's a one-time treatment, the effects might not last forever.
Exactly. Researchers are still trying to figure out why this happens and if they can stop it or fix it. It's possible people might need booster treatments in the future, but they're still looking into it.
Got it. So that's something to keep an eye on. And what about Beck's? That's the other one for hemophilia B, right?
Yes. With Beckfez, there's also the possibility of an immune response, but it uses a different kind of viral vector, so the screening process is a little different.
Okay, so different delivery system, different compatibility check. What's the overall takeaway here? What should we be thinking about?
Well, gene therapy is a really exciting field with so much potential for changing how we treat diseases like hemophilia.
But it's still pretty new, so there's still things to work out, right?
Right. And that's why tools like deep research can be so helpful. They help us stay up to date on the latest advancements and understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's all about making sure patients and doctors have the information they need to understand all this new stuff and make the best choices.
Okay, I'm a little overwhelmed with all this gene therapy stuff. Let's switch gears and talk about something a bit more lighthearted.
Sounds good. How about we look at how deep research can help us understand user interfaces? You know, those things we use every day.
Yeah, okay. I'm always interested in what makes a good user interface. What kind of things can deep research tell us?
It can analyze tons of data from user testing results, design principles, accessibility guidelines, and more to make recommendations and tell us what works best.
So it's not just about making things look pretty, it's about making sure they're easy to use and actually work for people. What's an example of something deep research could answer about user interfaces?
Okay, let's say you're building a website and you want to know if you should use drop-down menus or a bunch of buttons for navigation. Deep research can look at studies on user behavior and figure out which one would be better. Oh, that's super helpful. I've seen websites where the navigation is so confusing and you just end up clicking around randomly.
We've all been there. Deep research can help prevent that by giving you evidence-based advice. It can also help you understand how different design choices affect how people use the site, especially for folks with disabilities.
Yeah, accessibility is really important. So, deep research could tell me if my website is easy to use for people who use screen readers or have other accessibility needs.
Exactly. You can compare your website to accessibility guidelines and tell you if there are any places you need to improve.
Wow, it's like having an accessibility expert right there with you.
It kind of is. It can help you make sure your website works for everyone. And user interfaces aren't just on websites, they're everywhere, on apps, on car dashboards.
Yeah, that's true. So, how can deep research help us understand those kinds of interfaces?
Let's take car dashboards, for example. Deep research can analyze data on how drivers behave and what they prefer to see on the dashboard. That way, they can figure out the best spots for all the controls and displays. It can also look at how drivers use information, like speed, fuel level, and navigation, to make sure everything is clear and easy to understand.
That's really cool. So, deep research can actually make driving safer and more fun. What about apps on our phones? Those are such a big part of our lives these days.
Yeah, for sure. Deep research can analyze data on how engaged people are with apps and how long they keep using them. This helps developers understand what makes a good app. It can also identify patterns in how people use apps to help improve the design and how they work.
So, it can help developers make apps that people actually like to use.
Exactly. It's all about learning what works and what doesn't in the world of user interfaces and using that knowledge to make better experiences for everyone.
I'm noticing a pattern here. It seems like deep research is all about making sense of complicated information and then using that knowledge to make smarter decisions.
You got it. It's about cutting through all the noise and getting to the heart of things.
Speaking of cutting through the noise, online marketing can be pretty overwhelming. Can deep research help us figure all that out?
Definitely. It can look at data about how consumers behave, market trends, and even how effective different marketing strategies are. It can help businesses understand their target audience, what their needs are, and how to create marketing campaigns that people actually count about.
So it's like having a marketing expert on call.
You could say that. It can give you insights that would normally need a whole team of analysts and researchers, which makes it a valuable tool for any business, big or small.
I bet it can help with social media marketing too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Deep research can analyze social media data to see what's trending, how people feel about certain brands, and even how well social media campaigns are performing.
So it can tell me what people are saying about my brand online and whether my social media efforts are actually working.
Exactly. It's all about using data to make better decisions and get better results.
I'm starting to see how deep research can be used in so many different areas of our lives. It's really amazing.
It really is. It's about empowering us with knowledge and helping us understand this complicated world we live in.
And speaking of our world, let's talk about climate change. That's a big one for a lot of people these days. Can deep research help us understand something as complex as climate change?
Of course. It can look at information from a wide range of places, like scientific studies, government reports, news articles, everything. And it can give us a full picture of climate change. It can help us understand what causes it and how it affects us, track changes in temperature and sea levels, and even look for solutions.
So it helps us cut through all the misinformation out there and understand the truth about climate change.
Exactly. And it can also help us understand how climate change might impact different parts of the world and different industries.
That's so important. It's like having your own personal climate change expert right there. Climate change can be a pretty scary topic, though. Can deep research show us some good news, too?
Yeah, it can. It can highlight positive things like progress with renewable energy, growing awareness of the issue, and all the global efforts to tackle climate change. It can also show us success stories from communities and organizations that are making real change.
That's really good to hear. It's important to focus on solutions and positive things, even when we're facing a challenge as big as climate change.
Totally agree. Deep research helps us stay informed, get involved, and stay hopeful as we face this really important issue.
Okay, so we've talked about how deep research can be used for all kinds of things, from market research to even linguistics. But can it handle something really complicated like cutting-edge medical research?
Absolutely. It's especially good at keeping up with fast-moving fields, like gene therapy.
Okay, but before we jump into that, can you just remind me what gene therapy is and how it works?
Of course. Basically, gene therapy is about treating diseases by changing a person's genes. It's like fixing a blueprint at the source. There are a bunch of different approaches, but one of the most popular ones is to use something called viral vectors to deliver therapeutic genes.
Oh, yeah, right. Those viral vectors, we were talking about them earlier with the hemophilia treatments. They're like modified viruses that act as delivery trucks for genes.
Exactly. They've been engineered to be harmless and are now used to get those genes directly to the cells that need them.
And with hemophilia, those target cells are usually in the liver, right? Because that's where most of the clotting factors are made.
Yes, exactly. By delivering the missing genes to the liver, these gene therapies can help the body learn how to clot blood properly again. It's really amazing.
It really is. And you mentioned earlier that deep research found 3 gene therapies that have been approved in the US for treating hemophilia. What else did it tell us about them?
Let's start with hemgenix, the one for hemophilia B. One thing deep research pointed out was a potential concern with hemgenix, and this actually applies to any gene therapy that uses a viral vector. It's the possibility that the body might see the vector as a threat and launch an immune response against it.
So even though the virus itself has been modified to be safe, the body might still try to fight it off.
Right. And that immune response could actually make the therapy less effective, or it could even cause some side effects.
Oh, I see. So how do doctors manage that risk?
Before they give a patient hemgenix, they do a screening to see if the person has any antibodies against that particular viral vector. If they do, then I might not be eligible for the therapy.
So it's kind of like a compatibility check before they even begin. Got it. What about Roctavian, the one for hemophilia A? Any issues there?
Well, one thing deep research found with Roctavian is that the levels of factor VIII, that's the clotting factor it delivers, seem to decline over time in some patients.
So even though it's supposed to be a one-time treatment, the effects might not be permanent.
Yeah, that's the thing. And scientists are still trying to figure out why that is and what they can do about it. There's a chance that patients might need booster treatments down the road, but that's something that's still being studied.
Okay, so that's something to keep an eye on. And what about Befez? That's the other one for hemophilia B, right?
Yes. With Befez, there's also a risk of an immune response, but it actually uses a different kind of viral vector. So the screening process for that one is a bit different.
Right, different delivery system, different compatibility check. Okay, so what's the big takeaway from all this? What should we be thinking about?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that gene therapy has a ton of potential to completely change how we treat diseases like hemophilia. But it's still early, and there are still some things to figure out.
And that's where something like deep research can be super helpful, right? Helping us to keep up with all the new developments and understand the challenges.
Exactly. It makes sure that patients and their doctors have all the information they need to navigate this complex and quickly changing field.
Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground today, from markets and TV shows to linguistics and the future of gene therapy. It's been amazing to explore all the different things that deep research can do.
Absolutely. And it's not just about finding information, it's about connecting the dots, understanding the really complicated stuff, and finding new possibilities.
It gives us the tools to ask better questions, make smarter decisions, and be even more curious about the world around us.
So as we wrap things up today, think about how you might use deep research in your own life. What questions are you curious about? What mysteries do you want to solve?
There's a whole world of information out there just waiting to be explored, and deep research can help us do it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring.